What's going on, everybody? What is going on? I had to jump in live because the speaker vote is happening right now. All kinds of dramas going down. If you guys have been following what's happening, which I'm sure you haven't, because why? It's all the procedural stuff. Of course, they're going down to the wire. A few Republicans did not vote. They're re-asking them now. I want to join that in because this is right when it gets a little more interesting. Let's join them in so I can show you guys what it is.
Go, Sar. Gosar.
Gosar is still not voting. Paul Gosar from Arizona. There was a round of Republicans that didn't vote the first time. Andy Biggs,
Harris,
Clyde,
Maryland.
Harris.
Johnson.
He's now jumped in for Johnson. Now they were waiting for the back end, I think, to see what everyone else would say or where the votes would go. But Gosar still hasn't voted from what I just heard. Harris did, and I think Biggs may have. Chip Roy was the other.
Johnson.
Chip Roy jumped in for Johnson now because they know that he's screwed. He's already got 3 other folks that didn't vote for him at all. In fact, voted for someone else is more the important part about that.
Walls. Johnson.
And Walls jumped in as well, back for Johnson again. They still gonna have to vote again because he didn't. There were 3 Republicans that voted for other folks. I believe it was Emmer, Byron Donalds.
If there are any representatives-elect who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time.
This wasn't supposed to get this dramatic. I mean, it could have gotten this dramatic, and it's obvious that it did a little bit, but it was 50-50 whether or not he'd make it through this first round. So it's not super surprising, and it may even end in the next round. We'll see. This could be the beginning of something crazy or just a little blip in the process where they want to just kind of flex a couple muscles before they fall into line. Is that Paul Gosar?
Gosar.
Yeah, Paul Gosar voted for Johnson now. He had to make sure he went to the front to put his face there instead of just saying it like he could have 20 minutes ago. So they're gonna have to do a second vote. Who knows about when that's gonna happen? They'll determine all that, I'm sure, in a few moments. They'll let us know that as well. It'll be the Johnson. Oh, my chat is not working, you guys. That sucks. So I can't see if you guys are saying anything. For some reason, this didn't load up correctly. But anyways, so like I was saying, they're going to come back around and vote again. Who knows how long, but they'll have those moments for, I guess, Johnson and his allies to talk to the 3 votes, it looks like here, that went in a different direction to make a point, because I don't think they really believed that the folks that they put forward actually have a chance. As we saw, Donald Trump and all those guys backed Mike Johnson for this again. Even as far as I believe late last night, President-elect Trump jumped in for Johnson again. So we'll see where it goes, because it was somewhat expected, but also the one kicker in this is before this all went down and Mike Johnson was asked how he would go about it if this happened, because he's been meeting with folks, trying to get folks on the side before this even started, and it probably worked to a large enough degree, but he said he's not going to be doing any quid pro quos and not going to be giving any promises to the folks who are holding out. Thomas Massey obviously was one of them. He said he wasn't going to. And I wasn't able to see who the other voters were because I was too busy posting about how this was going. I did hear it, but I didn't know who those representatives were that did it. But there was 3 Republicans. One voted for Massey, voted for Tom Emmer, I believe. I'm not sure who voted for Byron Donalds, but he was one of the folks whose name was put out there. So there's 3 of them. Looks like they're scrambling a little bit to figure out what to do next. We'll see where they go with it. Folks are biting their nails, as you can see off to the left side of the screen. And consoling Mike Johnson, I guess, or strategizing. Steve Scalise sitting right next to him. I would love to hear what they're saying. This is one of those moments like comparable to sports. You know, they have the mic'd up moments whenever the NBA games are happening, and they want to see what, they want to see what Chris Paul is saying because he's very vocal, and they want to have, LeBron James mic'd up. I would love to have these guys mic'd up right now to hear what's happening on the floor as they strategize and cover their mouths like they're head coaches for football teams, trying not to have their words be read by other folks who can actually tell what they're saying. Mike Johnson, you're not covering your mouth, bro. We can tell what you're saying. Nervous smile and laughter. Again, I think he could expect this. Probably hoped against it, but this is somewhat expected at this point. I mean, Republicans are in control of the House. This is what happened last cycle. In case you guys didn't know, Kevin McCarthy got booted and replaced with this guy, but it took them some time to get to that point. A lot of infighting, a lot of other folks there put forward. Anger from many Republicans that wanted to keep Kevin McCarthy in, and of course was fueled by Matt Gaetz, and he had a coalition of a few folks, including Tim Burchett, Nancy Mace, I believe, was one of them that voted against him as well. So, I mean, that coalition seems to be kind of dissipated because, whereas Matt Gaetz, he resigned because of all of his drama and hopes to become Attorney General before that didn't happen either. So they're seeing this is what would seem like the boring part of all this. But if we could actually hear what's being said and what they're trying to figure out and who's upset, and especially these conferences here with around Mike Johnson, this would probably be the most interesting part that we're not privy to. I'm just saying, bro, if there it is Nancy Mace talking to Johnson and she's on the phone with somebody. This is the game playing that they're trying to pull off and to get him across the finish line. Moses Mike Johnson. Of course, this is what happens today. Sorry, guys, I don't come on live that much anymore, but this is one of those moments. Whenever it's something live that's about to happen and we could see the drama unfolding, this is the time to do it. We'll see where it goes. This could last all day. This could last another couple hours. This could last until the very next vote, whenever they choose to have that. So the drama isn't necessarily at an all-time high at this point. It's not like it was before when Kevin McCarthy got his ass kicked out. It's just a little bit more, slightly more dramatic, just because we don't know what these other folks are going to do. And there's Tim Burchett now sitting next to Mike Johnson. Apparently more strategies being put in place. He doesn't seem to appreciate this other member stepping up and getting involved either. We've seen things get heated also in these conversations when Kevin McCarthy was going through it all. It's going to be fun. I'm just waiting for them to tell us what they may, when they're going to have this next vote, so that they can have time to do all this repositioning and convincing and phone calls. Let's get the list of the few folks who didn't vote for him. I want to go back to Twitter and see. There. Anyways, this could go a little while with the whole milling around types of things. We'll see what happens. I don't want to bore you guys too much with as this unfolds, but this has been the interesting thing of today. On Friday, of course, in case things go really sideways, they don't want this to be the news that constantly flows through the week. There's Chip Roy in the back, who told us before Christmas recess, he wasn't so sure about voting for him. I believe that's Harris right there in front of him, who wasn't so sure about it, and then got into a small scuffle with Donald Trump, who floated potentially primarying him and called him a guy that's looking out for himself only. We'll see. But Thomas Massey hasn't gotten as much heat as I would have expected. He's the one from the beginning who said, hell no, not at all, not going to happen. So he's the one that he can afford to lose, and that's about it. And it's up to 3 at this point. So he's got to convince at least 2 others to come back to his side. And that's what I'm looking back at some of the things that happened earlier. Many of these guys that didn't vote the first round through here, they were all sitting together. So it seemed like a coordinated effort to sit back and see.
You can see there that Representative Johnson does not have the votes to be speaker.
Yeah, so C-SPAN's telling us
on this
an update here
first round of votes. The tally, 216 for Johnson, 215 for Jeffries, 3 for others. That adds up to 434.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Green is a professor of politics at Catholic University. He is with us, and I'd love to show those 4 pages of math that you have been doing.
Apparently, Scott
throughout this
McFarlane is
vote
posting
count.
this. Longtime
What
Trump advisor,
happened?
Hogan Gidley.
Well, we knew that there were
He's the
some
one who's talking to
Republicans
Mike
who were
Johnson
unhappy
as
with
well.
Johnson
That's who's sitting there,
and talked
next to him.
about, if not voting against him, voting president or not voting. We knew Tom Massey of Kentucky definitely was not going to vote for Johnson. But we had more certainly than I had anticipated. And although many of them ultimately in the second round, when their names were called, decided to vote for Johnson, there were 3 Republicans who voted for other named candidates. And so as a result, Johnson did not have the 218 that he needed to get elected this round of speaker voting.
Joining us from Capitol Hill is Michael Schnell of the Hill Publications.
So let me lower this for a couple
Schnell,
of thoughts here too.
What's going on up there?
Let's listen to him.
Yeah,
What's happening?
You know, we're still all digesting the vote tally here, but as the clerk officiates the votes and, you know, goes through the roll to make sure they have it right, it appears that Mike Johnson has fallen short of winning.
It appears so, huh? We knew that, bro.
As was mentioned, 3 lawmakers voted for somebody other than Johnson on the floor, 3 Republicans. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan, Keith Self for Byron Donalds, and Thomas Massey for Tom Emmer. And because of that outcome, that leaves Johnson with just support from just 216 Republicans. All 215 Democrats supported Hakeem Jeffries. And that 216 number is problematic for Mike Johnson because it's short of the 218 that he needed to clinch the gavel. So this is not officially yet. The clerk is going through it, but according to my tally, it looks like Johnson is going to fall short of the gavel on this first ballot.
And that's the same tally we have here on the set. Matthew Green, Catholic University politics professor, is with us as well. Could Ralph Norman change his vote from
Ralph
Jim
Norman?
Jordan,
I don't think was a big name that people
Congressman
expected
elect
to vote
Self
against him.
change his vote from Donald?
I mean, theoretically, they can all change their vote. The 3 of them can change their vote if they want to. It's possible that the lawmakers who voted for Johnson could change their vote on the second ballot. Anything is possible here, but it's definitely going to require a whole host of conversations, perhaps some negotiation, to get Johnson the amount of support that he needs to clinch the gavel.
When do you expect that, if it takes place, a second round of voting?
Yeah, it's all of a very tenuous situation right now, moving target, moving playing field. The first order of business will be the clerk officiating the results, and then we'll go from there to see if Mike Johnson decides to huddle with his conference, huddle with those lawmakers, or get back into another round of voting.
Michael Schnell, have you been able to be on the floor at all?
Anyway, so they're going through all this process really fast. We'll leave them up talking for a second, or at least listening and watching how they go about this. But again,
not yet.
I guess quick recap, in case folks weren't following, as wonkiness and boring as all this could be for anyone else that doesn't have to do this every day. But some of these Republicans were upset because of the spending bill that was about to go through right before Christmas.
We will be back in touch
they didn't like all the spending part of a 1,300-page bill. You know, the normal political talking points when it comes to opposing a bill. They didn't like that Mike Johnson had some agreements and negotiations with Democrats in that bill.
We don't
So, of
expect
course,
Tom
anything
Massey
that they
to
didn't
change his
like,
vote, but
they
could
could say is all
Ralph
Democrats'
Norman
fault.
and
And look
Congressman-elect
here,
Self
here's Mike
change their
Johnson agreeing
votes
with these damn
and
Democrats.
to
I can't
Mike
believe he'll
Johnson.
do such a thing to the American people.
Well, that's why
Some of them were
it's
upset
great
about
that C-SPAN's got these cameras.
regardless
so
of
we
the
can
fact that
watch,
Mike Johnson is
Speaker
always
Johnson and his
been to me
allies
in
trying
the kiss the
to
ring
have
of Donald
these
Trump,
huddles that you just heard
Elon
about,
Musk,
these
and the rest of
negotiations.
these guys who
And we can see him
want
now
what
sort of
they
walking
want.
up the aisle
But
here
he's
of
trying
the House
to
chamber.
give some,
I'm sure he's having these
I guess,
conversations. His allies
illusion
are, whether they
of the
can
fact
be
that he's willing
moved
to
now
work
or
across
not.
the aisle
It
because
may
he
very
still
well
wants to
be
come off
that they're
historically
not going to
as a
change their
Speaker of the
votes
House that
for
wasn't
this
just
round, but
partisan,
perhaps they would
even though he
for
very much
a
is.
second
If you look at his
round.
appearances
But
on
again,
television,
as you heard, the
very much
question is
so.
whether they would do that right
Go down to
away
these
or if
last
they
a couple of
want to
attacks that
hold
happened
out their
in Vegas
votes
and
for
also in
something
New
they can
Orleans.
get in
He's
exchange for
carrying
those
the
votes
same
from the
water that
Speaker.
Donald Trump is
So
talking
he
about,
just left
saying
the
that those
floor.
were terrorist
Speaker
attacks. And look,
Johnson
it
just
came
left
from
the
our
floor.
southern
By the
border.
way,
That's why
who is
these happened, because the border is
controlling
wide
the,
open. Mike Johnson
proceedings
piggybacked
today?
on these
Because
things.
there is
He
no
piggybacked on the
Speaker-elect.
2020
Right.
election
So
being
it's the
stolen.
clerk.
So
There
let's
is no
not act
Congress
like
right
Mike
now. Well,
Johnson is some
I mean,
kind
the
of a
Congress has
figure
started,
that's
but
willing
the
to cross
clerk, the acting
aisle
clerk, the
and
person
work with
who
folks with
opened
reality-based points of
the
view,
proceedings today
or even
is
just
technically the
disagreements when it
person who
comes to
is
how to
running
go
the
about
House
legislating
until a
and which
speaker is
kinds of laws
chosen.
to put
Because
forward.
there are no
There's
members
Thomas Massey
sworn in
there
at
talking
this
to
point.
Margie Taylor
Right,
Greene.
they're members elect
Another
at this
conversation
point. They
I
haven't
want to
been
hear
sworn in, but more
being
importantly,
said.
we don't have a.
But you know, Thomas Massey again is the guy who said, "You can rip my fingernails off and stick bamboo up them. I still won't vote for this guy." That's where he stands. So that's where we are, you guys.
What was going on during the vote count? Because we had lots here. Why don't you give them to me, and I'm going to just show these underneath my camera here. Just
So there's a lot of
just to
potential
give you a
issues
sense of
happening.
what
I
kind of
don't
math
know if
was
Marjorie
going
Taylor
on
Greene is
while-
given
while,
Massey trouble.
this
I
was
don't think
happening.
anyone could at
And
this
you can
point.
see
It's
here
not a
all sorts of
surprise
math
of what
as
he
more
decided to do.
members changed or
Now maybe with
didn't change or
Representative
didn't
Self,
vote, et cetera, et cetera.
who I believe he voted for
6
Jim
people
Jordan.
held out.
I'm blanking
Or
on
6
who they
Republicans
were all
held
voting
out.
for, but the
Or
substitutions were
7,
Jim
and
Jordan,
all ended up voting for
Emmer,
Mike Johnson.
and Byron.
What's the strategy?
Byron Donalds.
Right. So 7
As you see Byron
just did
Donalds'
not
head right
respond
there
when their
in the
name
back.
was called. They chose not to vote.
I'm talking to some of those
And
folks
there were
who originally
a couple
didn't vote
possibilities
or
here.
then voted
One,
against.
as this was happening, was that they just didn't want
listen
to
more.
vote for Johnson, but didn't want to vote for anybody else. And they didn't care if that meant that Johnson would get to be speaker or not. The other possibility was that they were doing it to make a point, to say that you need our votes to get elected speaker. We will eventually vote for you. But by doing this, we're making you sweat a little bit and show that we matter and you need to listen to us as this 119th Congress proceeds. As it turned out, they all did end up voting for Johnson. But it wasn't enough because you had these 3 who voted for other candidates and did not change
Massey,
their votes.
Norman, and Self.
That's right.
Massey,
And
Norman.
at
and
this
Self.
point, what do you expect to happen next?
Well, this is where the process of negotiation comes in.
He
Just
said
as
he's not
we
gonna
saw
do
2
it.
years ago when Kevin McCarthy was unable to get an absolute majority when he was running for speaker in January of 2023. The question is whether those negotiations, as we heard earlier, those discussions are happening now, or whether or not, or if they're going to happen at a later point. And it kind of depends on the politics of the moment, what these members, what they want, why they voted the way they did, whether they're open to negotiation, if so, what it is they want in exchange for those votes.
Matthew Green, often people are promised the first round. I will support you on the first
Again,
round.
Mike
Does
Johnson
that
said he's
mean
not
that
going to be
some of
doing
the
things
questionable
like negotiating
votes,
for their votes, but he's going to
people
have
who are
to.
maybe not in total
Starts
support
talking
of
tough, then he gets to
Mike
negotiating.
Johnson to be speaker could change their vote on the second round and further muddle this process?
That is certainly possible. Johnson and his team hopefully were doing the things that a strong leader does when they have a good whip operation, which is they look and see what kind of commitment they're getting. And if it's someone saying, I will vote for you, period, that means something else than I'll vote for you the first time. And if if there are folks who said, I'll vote for you the first time, they need to also be talking to them, as well as the folks, the 3 who wouldn't vote for Johnson in the first ballot.
It's ironic, maybe, that the 3 other votes, Tom Emmer, Jim Jordan, and Byron Donalds, all supported Speaker Johnson.
Well, that's not
That's happened
surprising.
before.
Yeah, that doesn't make any difference.
And it's also interesting
cares?
that they
They
either
just
are
got
in
used.
leadership or in leadership positions as well, as opposed to, outsider, first-time members kind of thing. But, whoever they choose in some ways is irrelevant, because the point is they didn't choose not to vote or vote present. They chose to vote for another candidate, which changed the math. And in this case, made it so Johnson, as of right now, does not have the votes to be speaker.
When Pete Aguilar nominated Hakeem Jeffries,
these are all the other things that are
he
happening.
said
So anyways,
from the party
for you guys to
that-
jump in, obviously this guy,
And you kind of
Mike
laughed.
Johnson, is
What
going
was
to need
that?
to part the
Well, one way of
Mike
thinking
Johnson's got to
about
part the Red
way
Sea,
that
as he
any
called himself,
legislative
Moses.
body works,
I don't know if
including the
Moses did
House,
that or not.
is,
But
what
in order
is
to
the
get
majority?
his
And you can look at
his
the majority in
nomination
terms of
across
just
the
party
finish line,
affiliation and
who knows how
say, in
long
this
this is gonna
case, where
take.
Republicans
who
have
knows if the drama
more
is going
seats, so they're
to
the
ensue
majority.
all day.
But there's other
there's
kinds
also
of
probably going to
majorities
be
as
some
well.
of these
So
folks
one kind of
who are
majority
just
is a
there, going to be
procedural
running on cable
majority, which
news
is
to
do you
talk
have
about
the
what went
ability
down, to
to
give their
control the
perspective
agenda,
of what
to
what's
decide
going to
what
happen
comes to the
next,
floor.
and probably
Now there's a policy
whoop up
agenda.
some
Do you have a
support
majority to
for
pass the
Johnson,
things
because
that you
obviously the
want?
majority of them
And I think
were on his
what he was
side.
referring
So three,
to was what we
and
saw
I'm not sure if they're
quite a
going to
bit
jump
in
on
the
any
previous
kinds of
Congress,
interviews to talk
which
about
is
what
even
they're
though
up to, because they're
Republicans had
probably
a
too busy
numerical
negotiating
majority,
for
they
their
had more
vote, or
Republicans
for
than
whatever reason they
Democrats who
decided
were
to do
in
this.
the
This could
House.
be a
There weren't
show
enough
vote.
willing to vote with the
And be like,
party
yeah,
on some
I
key
just didn't want it to happen
issues
the first time.
involving the
I really
agenda
want you to
or
know what I
involving
can do with
legislation.
you.
And they would often have to
No,
turn to
maybe that's the
Democrats
plan.
to get the votes they needed. So I think what he's saying there is, look, you may have more people, there are more people on your side than our side, but you have more people willing to defect. And so you're going to have to come to us when it comes to things that really, really matter.
All
Marjorie
right,
Taylor
we were
Greene on
just
the
seeing
phone.
Steve Scalise, majority leader.
So I believe what
And
that
Tom
analyst was just saying was there could be some Democrats saying, yo, listen,
The
not that
whip
they would
has
vote for him, but
confirmed that there
these are
will
the type of
be
things that could
another
happen
vote.
to you. So make sure when
So,
you
and
get in,
Speaker
if
Johnson has
and
left
when
the
you get in,
floor.
you can negotiate with
And,
us as well. The way that I believe he did a
let's
little bit
watch the
of
floor
during
for a
that spending bill.
few seconds, and
So
let's
just
see
going
what's
forward,
going
they
on.
kind of want to set the tone for how this may be and to understand who he has to better out. He's supposed to lead the entire House of Representatives, not just Republicans. There might be about to be said about when they're doing this again. So until then, we need to hear them murmuring. Also, there's people's kids in the chamber, because obviously what's also happening today is anyone who's now representative-elect coming in, they get their position certified, and they're now officially a member of the House of Representatives. So they bring their children in, they give tours. I mean, anybody would do that. You're very excited. You just won your first time coming into Congress. So you bring your family to tour them of the facility and the chamber, and look, this is where I'm gonna be working. Not yet, bro. Not yet. Because of this guy who's making that face. We'll see where it goes next. But yeah, that's why you see children milling around here and there. So if anything gets out of pocket, just understand folks' families are there with them too. Husbands, wives, and kids, grandkids, mothers, who knows. Very excited for their folks to get in. But on the first day of it, it really shows how many things don't get done. I would love to know what Marjorie Taylor Greene has been talking to him about, because he doesn't seem very agitated, put it that way. Laughing with someone else. Not Andy Biggs. Thomas Massey is who this is in Kentucky. And also maybe what the powers that be in the potential new administration will be saying about him. Because as we saw, Elon Musk and Donald Trump controlled that spending bill. They stepped in and said, nope, scrap it, do something different. And Mike Johnson listened to them. So they want to flex their power as well. These are all kinds of things. And if there's anybody that's a thorn in their side, especially if obviously Republicans being an issue for them, they're going to try and make sure they know, stop holding this up. Because if this doesn't happen, Donald Trump cannot, his election and his win cannot be certified. And he also can't officially become president of the United States. That would be delayed as well. So all these things are up in the air. All these things are actually on the chopping block for this. The importance behind all this comes from this. I may jump out and jump back in, you guys, because I really can't see the chat. The stupid thing on YouTube is telling me something went wrong, and it absolutely is not showing me anything you guys are saying. Would love to know. Let's see if I can. Again, sorry, you guys. Chat jump back in. It didn't work out for me, so I'm not able to see what you guys are saying. I may have to dump off completely and come back again when the next vote happens. But I'm going to be following this for as much of the day as I can while I get nothing else done. One more time for this, you guys.
Win the first ballot. I can't think of it. May be the first time in the history of the House that this has happened, and I think that speaks to the nature of
Still not happening. So if you guys are commenting, sorry, I can't see
that we have strong partisanship, right, which we always have for the speaker races, but certainly people are not going to defect very often on big votes. But you also have division. You have division, especially within the Republican Party. And in fact, really since 2011, with one exception, we have had every vote for speaker.
Okay, Wong talk. Sorry, you guys. So we're done with them for now. I'm going to be back in a minute to see if I can get this chat going in, because I would love to see what the responses are, see what people are saying. Check out some of the posts that are happening, some of the reporters that are there and talking. We may jump back in with some other videos of even responses of some of these Congress folks that are probably bailed out to talk about it, maybe speak to the media. We'll see. But we'll see you guys in a minute. This is going to be going on all day. I know it seems pretty boring, but there's a lot of ramifications off of this that will go forward into this next administration and into this next Congress. So we'll see you guys in a minute. Thank you guys for being here. We'll be back soon. Keep an eye out for us. I'm going to jump back in there live for a minute.